All right. Good, good. Okay.
So I had trouble with that quiz. I didn't know how to answer a lot of the questions.
No worries. It's just to give me a baseline so that when we're talking about stuff, I kind of have some idea of what
Well, at
direction
least you
we're
know
going.
Morgan.
Yeah.
So,
I was like, I know you guys. So actually, that's been kind of the good thing that most of the people that have signed up for coaching, like they're either have been posting a lot of videos, so I kind of know their dogs, or they're already students. So
yeah.
I kind of have that idea. So what are you looking to get out of the coaching program? So what made you sign up for it?
Well, get out of my way. Really. I just want more control over him. I mean, he chooses to ignore me, which drives me crazy.
Yep. It's
So,
not a good feeling.
no, it's like he's giving me the finger. He knows exactly what I want when I want it. But sometimes, like I was just out in the backyard with him, and he loves to play ball, loves to retrieve, but he'll do it on his terms, not on mine, right?
So what does he do?
He just stands there, and if I wait him out, then he'll finally come to me. But you know,
So does he get the ball and then not bring it,
yeah,
or yeah?
he just sits it and stands there.
Okay. Does he keeps it in his mouth, or does he drop it?
No, he keeps it in his mouth.
Okay.
Most of the time, he'll bring it back, but occasionally he'll just stand at the back of the property and just look at me and say, "No, I'm not. I'm not coming this time."
Okay. Does it tend to be after a certain number of repetitions, or does he do it all the time?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Irish Water Spaniels, they always say they only do things 3 times and they're done.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like working with the hound dogs.
yeah, yeah,
Hounds don't repeat things well. They really don't.
yeah,
They're like, I already did it. Why am I doing this again?
yeah, exactly.
Although I find that kind of unusual for a hunting dog, because you'd think, like, I guess they don't do that many repetitions really
No,
for
yeah.
hunting, do they?
We had him in field work, but he loved it. He would get the duck, and then he'd run around with the duck in his mouth and
Okay.
wouldn't come back.
The same
Great.
kind of idea then, right? Like
I
he
think.
gets it, and then it's like the value is just elsewhere.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool, cool. All right. And for agility specifically, you had mentioned that you want to work on remembering the course. Is that right?
Well, yeah, that's my problem, not his.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we can definitely. Oh, we're a little frozen. That
I
might be
don't have
me.
the opportunity. Sorry.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I think I just got a little frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, we're
Did you
breaking
hear
up.
what I said or not?
No, no. If you could just repeat
Oh,
that. I think we're back in now. I think.
frozen. Yeah.
Yeah. Technology.
Okay. So the only time I get to run an agility course is when I'm with you. I don't. I only have about 4. I have 3 jumps, and I don't have a tunnel. I have some weave poles and what else do I have? And some cones. But other than that, I don't get to work a course.
Okay. So do you find, like, if you're doing stuff with the equipment that you have, are you okay remembering that stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, so how many obstacles do you typically feel like you're comfortable with from
5 or 6.
remembering? 5, 6. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So what I would tend to recommend for that is when you're walking a course, walk it in sections, right?
Okay.
So figure, like, if you're good with 5 to 6 obstacles, then walk that piece and just walk that piece, right? So do 5 to 6, make sure that's solid, right? Then walk the next section, right? So then I would do, so if you're doing 5 to 6, then you would do the next 5 to 6 obstacles, right? Or you
Right.
can even go smaller. So if you find that you got the first 5 to 6, but then the next section is a little bit much, you might only add 3 obstacles to that. So find where you're comfortable. Be sure to walk that section, and you want to make sure you get it to the point where you don't have to think about it, right?
Okay.
So if you have to, if when you're walking, and this is kind of, because it'll change based on the course itself. So if when you're walking, you find yourself having to think about where to go, that's your cue to go start again.
Okay.
Right? So
Yeah.
what we want to avoid in our walkthroughs is excessive overthinking. The more we think, right, the less flow we're in. So for me, when I'm actually remembering an entire course, I'm not thinking at all. I'm going into the feeling of the course, because that's what I practiced while I was walking it, right? So if, for example, I did 1, 2, 3, and then had to interrupt my flow to think about 4, that might be me deciding what handling to do, right? So am I going to front cross or blind cross this? That's taking me out of the flow of the course.
Right.
Right. So instead of continuing on to 5 and 6, I would actually go back and do 1, 2, 3 without now thinking about the handling, and repeat that.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So it's really important when you're memorizing a course that there's no interruptions. If there's no interruptions, you'll be more likely to do it. Right. Do it in one smooth motion, because really, and I've talked to, multiple experienced agility people with it. And high level people, because when you're competing in high pressure, it's kind of like you lose half your brain.
Yeah.
Right? Because the pressure kind of blocks you. So for remembering that, typically the consensus is that you're looking more for flow and less for thought. So the more you're thinking, the more disconnected it's going to be. And of course, with him, the more disconnected he's going to be.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So that'll be a big part for him, or for you, and it will help him. So even in class, I would recommend doing that same thing. And if you're doing 1 to 5, notice any mental interrupts that happen while you're walking. That includes looking where you're going. So if you have to like check where the next obstacle is, that's a mental interrupt. I would go back to the beginning. So check where it is, right? Go, okay, I'm front crossing. Where's my tunnel? Oh, that's my tunnel. Oh, I need to move over a little bit when I do that front cross, right? That might be a thought process, because I'm analyzing where I need to be in relation to the obstacle. Don't stop. And then I would, then go back to the beginning and do that piece again until you don't have to think about it. What we want to avoid doing is moving on. So if I'm like, okay, I got to be over here for this, and then I'm doing the dog walk, and then I got to go threadle a tunnel. Basically, we're just stringing all this stuff together without actually putting it into an easier situation. So it's really important that we kind of get to that place. You'll find if you get to a place while you're walking, right, and this happens quite often, is that you'll actually start to forget while you're walking. Like you'll have a spot where you're like, oh shoot, I did that again, right? Those are the spots where you have to break that down into like one obstacle. So if I have a spot I'm forgetting, I'm gonna add one obstacle in and then rehearse that walkthrough, right? And it might mean, in class we're doing short things anyways.
Yeah, I could probably work the whole class without Morgan.
Yeah, most people can. And that's why I said, like, I actually get an unfair advantage as an agility instructor, because all I do, like, all day, every day is shadow handle, right? So every time someone asks me, like, oh, can you show me that front cross again? I just get to practice without my dogs over and over again. Right. And it's not that I won't ever forget where I'm going on course, because I mean, that happens, right? It happens to everyone. I've forgotten my course on a world championship. It really sucks when that happens.
Do you study the course on paper before you even get to that point, or?
I do, but loosely. And the reason I say loosely is because it often is not the same as on paper. So for me, the reason that I'll look at it on paper, if I do, sometimes small competitions I don't. I know, I spilled food everywhere. There, have some. So I'll look at the course map just so that when I go into the course, I know the general idea of where the numbers are, so that I'm not trying to like look around people to figure out the cones, right? So the only reason I don't plan out handling on paper, because then I'm less resistant, or I'm more resistant to changing it. So you know, if a jump is tweaked a little bit of a different way, and I'm doing that, but you know, now it's because of how the judge set it up, it would be a front cross probably, and on paper I look like I could blind cross it. I don't want to get stuck into running it. So for me personally, I've never done the like draw the lines and mark out the handling. I just find it changes way too much. Right.
Okay.
But I do want to know where the general gist of the course goes, so I don't have to be searching for cones, because that takes extra time. But I don't fixate on it. I don't try to memorize it on paper, because for me it's a body experience. Like I need to feel where the course goes, and then once I'm done actually walking. No, I know. I spilled all the cookies and they're all over the floor. It's very hard for you. my treat container fell out of my fanny pack, and so like he's like, there's cookies everywhere. It's not fair. So not fair. Yeah, it's like beyond it's your choice level. Poor dog. I know, it's so hard on his brain some days. It doesn't take much to be hard on his brain. So yeah, so I won't get into like too much detail. At the end, I'll go off to the side and just rehearse the motions. So like pretend, I do a lot of visualization that way, and I find that tends to help, right? Especially with timing, because I'll actually visualize the timing, right, which is a little bit more advanced. But the main thing I would say for you is, yeah. Well, for me, it sounds a little bit weird, but my best runs are when I'm running my invisible dog and my real dog at the same time. So I actually have a mental visualization going as I'm running, so that I can tell if they get out of sync.
Oh, wow.
So if my real dog jumps long and my imaginary dog is tight, I'll naturally sync up. I'll like change my timing until my real dog gets back on track with my imaginary dog. But that's like insanely, and I can only do that if I'm not thinking. So if I have any moment where I have to think about my handling or what my dog is doing, it doesn't work. But like that's kind of my goal, because then your timing is like phenomenal. But we don't need to get to that level yet.
No.
The main thing will be for you noticing. So and you can do this even with the equipment that you have in your yard, right? Just set up something fairly small. You can always do a lot more repetitions. So if you're only working with 3 jumps, then you can definitely, you can make 20 obstacles out of 3 jumps, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes trickier to remember. So you want to create a sequence, initially start inside your comfort zone. So that would be like 5 to 6, right? And then you can expand that sequence, being sure that when you're walking, there's no interrupts, right? So nothing kind of in between. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. And then same thing at class. So at class, notice, okay, I'm going to walk this course, and my goal is to have no interrupts as I'm walking it. The moment I have to think about anything at all, right, then I have to start again. So I just train myself to, like, I'll have the thought, I'll figure it out intellectually. Okay, do I front cross? Do I rear cross? Oh, I'm going to rear cross this jump. This is what a rear cross feels like. Now go back and chain that all forward again. Right? So it ends up becoming more of a habit to build on that smoothness and keep yourself in flow. You need a distraction.
He's so cute.
I love this dog, like ridiculously amount. Like, oh, he's so much fun when you're not doing that.
Oh, I know, it's hard not to laugh.
All right, enough of the barking. No. All right, here. We'll give you something to chew on. Bad dog training 101. You can have a distraction for a moment. Here. We'll distract you from the cookies all over the floor.
He can jump over that X-Pan, can he?
Oh yeah, he could. He just chooses not to. I will put a cover on it before he learns to do that, though. But I didn't want, he was in the chewing phase, so I didn't really want to put a cover on it and then have him wreck it. But in general, honestly, he's really easy. Like, he's so easy. Like, he's like, okay, I'll just lay here. Like, I don't even know if he would ever try to get out. Like, he just doesn't.
Oh, wow.
It might change as he gets older. But for right now, he's just like,
Yeah.
he's a really nice dog. He's just a nice dog. And lovely to work with. Oh my God. Like
Oh,
he's
that's great.
so tuned in, like ridiculously tuned in. Guys, enough. Oh, delivery. That's so good. 1 second. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's like a disaster call.
Yeah.
Canada Post shows up. All right. Okay,
So in terms of games, is there something specific I should be doing
for what?
for games?
Yes, yeah, I'll give you some games. So I just want to go over kind of what your goals are. Obviously, you want more engagement with you. That's kind of a given, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes he's all over me. He's like Velcro dog. I can't walk anywhere in the house that he's not with me.
Okay.
But
And so what does a typical day look like for him? Like kind of walk me
well,
through
we belong to a power walking club. So
Mhm.
we get up in the morning. I take him out in the backyard. I run him for about half an hour playing ball and stuff. And then we leave at 8:30. We're back at 10:30.
Mhm.
Then I take him over to the park, and we run a little bit over there. He poops. And then the rest of the day, he's in the backyard playing. And we usually go for about a 5 or 6K walk at about 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon to tire him out. And that's it.
Okay. So when he's in the backyard, what's he doing?
He's wanting to play, always wanting to play. Play
Okay.
ball, play anything. He wants to engage with me or Bill.
Okay. So he's just kind of like constantly play with me, play with
Yeah.
me, play with me.
Yep.
All right. So one of the things that I would recommend for games, I know you've already been doing some of these, because to me, it sounds like he's probably going through decision fatigue. And
Okay.
because he's always on, right?
Yeah, he's always on.
So yeah. So when their brain is really busy, it kind of leads to that highly distractible, struggling to focus. Just like if your day was super like, I need to make decision after decision after decision, it lowers your impulse control. So the more decisions you have to make in a day, the less decision making, like the more fatigue you'll end up feeling mentally, which is often what leads to some of our bad habits at maybe just me at night.
Right.
I'll make good decisions all day. If I'm going to make a bad decision, it's usually in the evening, because we're going through so many decisions. So with dogs, one of the issues that they have is that they're always making decisions, right? So do I look over here? Do I look over here? Do I sniff that? Do I come to you? Do I take you the ball? Do I play with the ball by myself? It can get very exhausting for them mentally. So that might be leading in a little bit to why he doesn't have the engagement when you want it, but why he engages like through the rest of the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I would try to do is limit his decisions. So limit the decisions he has to help him with that. So boundary games is obviously the big one for it. It's also with the boundary games, our goal is to go, as we've done before, into the calmness state. And for you, I would say it would be out of sight. You want to get it to the point where you're actually not with him. Because what will happen a lot is that as we go throughout our day, we constantly interrupt their deep sleep. So they don't get a chance to actually go into a fully resting state, because every time we get up, every time we look like we're going to go somewhere, right? Like, do you find with him that, if you were to get up or start to walk away, he's like instantly up with you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they follow. My
putting him
terrier
in
is very much like that.
Yeah. I've been putting him in his crate more.
Yeah.
Because the boundary is not good enough, he'll follow me, right?
Yeah. If I'm doing boundaries, I back tie. I tie them to something.
If I tell him to stay, he will. But if I go outside or something, then he's at the door.
Yeah, and the crate can be definitely a good alternative as long as he's settling there. And I would just tend to give him the rest. So how I would time it is before you're going to do your training session, make sure he has a couple hours of downtime first.
Okay.
Right? So kind of schedule out your day, because it sounds like it's pretty routine, schedule based anyways, which
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
So what I would tend to do is if I know my training session is going to be, at noon or whatever, 2 hours before that, I would make sure that I put him away so he has time to recharge. Because I feel like he's very busy mentally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it leads to him kind of doing the zoned out thing. So I'm wondering if part of that might just be that his brain can't focus on one thing. Like he's so all over the place with his mind constantly that when you're asking him to focus, he's just kind of, that brain fog that you end up getting. So it's or just me. I get brain fog sometimes, and you're trying really hard to focus, but
wait till you to be my age.
There's no hope for me. Oh my God. I'm bad enough. I'm bad enough now. I'm like, what did I come in here for? Oh.
It gets worse.
Oh my God. Oh, it's so, and I have no sense of time. So that's like another thing. They're like, oh yeah, no, it was just a few weeks ago. They're like, no, it was like 3 months ago. I was like, oh really? I'll think it's just been a year, and really it's been 5 years. I'm like, oh. I have no sense of time. It's kind of funny. So I would try that out just from keeping him in that state. If you need to do, and crates are definitely more defined, obviously, because it limits the decision, and we're trying to limit his decisions. So if you're doing boundary games out of sight, obviously start small initially. But for me, I tend to like tie my dogs to something so that they can't get off the boundary. So I just say I take the option away. So I'm like, here's, and I obviously I supervise them because I don't want them getting tangled in the leash or anything like that. But if I'm doing like, Hijack, my terrier, has that problem. Like if I get up, like and so he never really is fully relaxed, because he will come out of it instantly. The second I go to roll my chair back, he's like, oh, where are we going? Right. And he has to follow me. He wants to follow me all around the house, which leads to him making worse decisions and getting kind of grumpy. Like he gets grumpy with the other dogs if he doesn't get enough rest. So I had to start putting him in the different room, and I just tied him to Heist's pen, actually, that looks like Jolt's here, on the bed. So, initially he was kind of like, oh, what the heck, I can't get off. And then he was like, oh, this is actually okay. And then I would come and unhook him, and then he'd have his normal time. But that really actually helps with his decision making and focus in whole, because it was he just had too much going on. Even when he was in his crate, he wasn't fully settled because of all the other dogs being there. So that's definitely one that I would work on.
So can you see him? He's sitting there whining because he wants me to do something.
Yeah, and that would be a perfect time to be like, you can be in a different room. Right? And initially that will take a little bit. So I mean, I will work the calmness protocol, which is either use different elements of it. One would be like a crate or a boundary, right? So it's active rest. The other one would be using strategies like Kongs, bones, things like that, where they're more up. Like when we look at the arousal level, obviously the crate or a boundary away from you is going to be lower than if they're chewing a bone or a Kong, but both are tending to be calm. And then the other one is spontaneously capturing calm. So this one actually made a big difference as well. So rewarding your dog when they are calm, you kind of have to be a bit stealthy with it. They will come up in excitement level when you feed them. They will. What you're looking for is how quickly they go back down again. Right? So when I go and I feed my dog, even if they're asleep, I'll kind of wake them up to feed them, which sounds counterproductive, but I will. So they wake up, they're kind of like, oh, there, look, here, have a cookie. He's like, oh, that's nice, but he was really sleepy, so he just goes back to sleep. That's what I'm looking for, because that's the arousal up down transition, right, that I use for everything in a very mild way. If you have a dog who's psycho about food or goes into work mode, it may take them quite a while to come back down, and that's their own process. So I don't mess with that too much. Like if they then start whining at me because I fed them, that's actually part of the process. So I
Okay.
really want them to come up and then come back down based on duration. And that's why I was saying with boundary games, one of the things that I focus on in my household boundaries is making sure the duration is long enough that they actually go into relaxation if at all possible, right?
Okay.
Once they know it, like he already knows boundaries, right? He already knows how to be in his crate. And you could do the same thing with crate gate, like with him being in a closed crate is fine.
Yeah.
Like I'll come in and I'll, calmly deliver food to my dog. They'll go, oh, are we doing something? And then I just go about my business and until they go, oh,
Yeah.
there was nothing else coming. Because what I don't want is for them to be in constant work mode. If they're in constant
Right.
work mode, they're going to burn their brains out. Like I want small, focused work so that they retain the information, right? So there's a
Right.
lot of calmness in between. That's something I'm experimenting a lot with my puppy, and his retention rate has been amazing. Like
Okay.
so with him, because I do most of my training on just walks where it's not high arousal. It's just, he's
Yeah.
just walking. So he's walking and then we do maybe a minute of some sort of training and then we go back to walking again. And what I found with him is that he actually retains the lessons way better than any of my other dogs where I've done structured training sessions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Okay.
it's very much like the arousal comes down, he's here, and then I bring it up a little bit for the training session of whatever I'm working on, let's say like wrapping trees or something like that, and then I let it come back down again, and then the next time he basically retains almost all of it, which was pretty amazing. Whereas my other dogs, I've done a lot of training as training sessions, right? So I would take them out to train cone wraps, right? And I found that because they were often in a higher arousal state when they were learning it, half of it went out their brain, right? They would get frustrated a lot quicker because it was a session that they got really pumped up about. So just being able to kind of intersperse it with like calmness, now focus, really short bursts, right?
Okay.
Like very, very small amounts. So that could be if you were playing ball, again, going from make sure that we're starting from a fairly neutral state, playing ball for maybe 2-3 repetitions while he's still in a good state, and then going back to calmness again. So we're not burning out their brain within the session, right? Like
So I'll
keep it
send them
super
back to
short.
his boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
And
just
then
bring them back or have them in that. It doesn't necessarily need to be the total control. It could be the boundary. It could be just bringing them in the house and ending the session there, right? Like just keeping things super, super short and
Okay.
making sure that the engagement for you is going to be fun. So that's kind of the strategy. So as a game, I would work on the boundaries in as many different situations as possible, specifically out of sight, right?
Right.
Will be a big one. So that he's not so hyper in tune to everything that you're doing, right? So that he
Right.
feels like, okay, I don't have to watch because you might get up, you might do this, you might go over here. And if you need to back tie him for that, to tie him to something so that he can't get off the boundary, that's fine. You're still close by. So you do
Right.
want to supervise any kind of tying, obviously, because they could get tangled and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So I check in with them really frequently. Or I set up cameras. I like setting my my camera there so I can see it. So I know,
Yeah.
like that I'm on my computer, but I can actually see him in the other room, right? For my dog that
Yeah.
gets anxious and wants to follow me all the time. I also then know when to go back and reward. So I know when he's calm because I can see it. So often I'll just FaceTime myself and put my iPad there. So I can just see. I like to spy on my dogs a lot. Because then I know that, or if he gets anxious, I know those moments. So if I need to go calm him down, I can. If he gets tangled in his leash, I can go help him that way. So it's just, I tend to watch a lot. So you can definitely use technology for that. I usually just have my phone and my iPad set up to FaceTime myself. So I can see, although now I have a fancy camera. So yeah, now I have like one of those dog cameras that like alerts me when my dog's moving or barking or something like that. It like
Oh,
pings
neat.
my phone. Yeah. And I can
Oh.
talk through it. So I can,
Oh my God.
yeah. They don't really listen to me so much though. And my internet is not great here. So but I've been like walking on the trail and it will actually which is, down the road, and my phone will
Right.
go off and it's my dog's barking in the house. And so
Oh.
that I can be like, stop it. It doesn't really work so well. But at least they know. They're like, where's that voice coming from? And then they bark at you. But like the other day, Tazzy was having a total meltdown in the house because it was like continuous barking. And so I knew from the field to come in and settle her. And she just, oh, okay, I'm good now. And then went back out and she didn't bark again for the next 5 hours,
Oh.
I think. So that was actually really good because sometimes she gets herself hysterical about things. And just coming in and calming her back down again and then going back out, it made a massive difference. So that's actually been kind of cool. All right, so first game would be boundary games. The other one that I would do is a combination game with him. And because we need to devalue the environment and bump up you. So every time I'm working with engagement and disengagement, I kind of pair them together. So disengagement from the environment and engagement with you, right? So the main concepts with him that I would tend to work on are the calmness, disengagement, engagement, and then of course focus. I feel like he actually has half decent focus in that he knows what he's supposed to do, but I feel like he gets that zoned out feeling. So it's not that he doesn't have focus, because he does, and he knows his behaviors quite well.
Yeah, once he starts sniffing the grass, oh my god.
Yeah, so this game's actually for that specifically. So what we're going to do is a combination of scatter feeding, which is going to get him engaged in the grass, and orientation dash, right? So the orientation dash, and actually I'll just show it to you here. Have you been on the Training Academy site much?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going through the CALM course because I haven't done that before. And then I've done the 21-day or 30-day game thing.
Perfect.
So yeah.
Yeah. So you've got lots of experience with them then.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just gonna share my screen just to show you how to search for the games. Okay. So that's all my badges. Ignore that part.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff. Okay. So a couple of things, just Training Academy. The most important one, which I'm super excited about, they just added the search bar, I think today.
Okay.
So now you can actually put a name of a game in and search it, whereas before you had to try and find it in the library, which was super. So, so if I look for orientation dash into that search bar, it will, once it catches up, it will bring up your actual game. Okay, so scatter feeding, I'm sure there is a video on scatter feeding, but it's literally just putting food in the ground. So then what I would end up doing, so I just click on the orientation dash, which of course brings up your video. It's a pretty basic video. It's only a couple of minutes. If you scroll down, it'll tell you what the concepts are, so you know the concepts that you're working on at that same time. So you'll be able to find it in different areas. And then for me, any game that I like, I hit add to my academy, because I have my own personal academy. So if you go to my academy, it'll have all my saved games. So these are just ones that I've put in there, right? It just makes it a lot easier. So what you're going to do for the orientation dash and scatter feeding is initially just try one piece of food down. Then you're going to end up engaging him back with you. So when he looks back at you, you're going to run to something. Now that could be to a toy. It could be throwing food forward. It could be having him chase you. It could be a treat and train. So anything that's going to encourage him to come back faster, right? So our idea is that we're going to actually get him sniffing. Low value. So make sure it's not something exciting, right? So the lowest value food that will keep him interested. If just sniffing, so this is kind of the one for him. If sniffing by itself is reinforcing, you don't even need to add food. Right? So if he'll just go sniff the grass because he can, then don't even worry about putting food out. Right? Because we don't even, like, the grass is valuable enough. He doesn't actually need anything more than that. So you're just looking to get him distracted when the important part will be when he engages back with you, and that may take a while initially.
Yeah,
If
right.
it takes a super long time, it just tells me that the distraction I was using was too high, right?
Okay.
So if like, you know, if you take him up to a tree and a million other dogs have peed on that tree and he wants to sniff there for 20 minutes, right? The joys of owning a boy dog. Like
Yeah.
true story, because I had to work on disengagement off of trees with Hustler. Because like he would get stuck sniffing like where all the other dogs had peed, and that was like super high value for my intact male hound dog, right?
Right.
So that was my distraction, is that I would just take him towards a place that I knew he would tend to want to sniff, and then wait for him to distract back. One of the ones that I actually ended up doing totally, because it came up in the moment, was there was a female in season. And so I actually ended up playing this game in the area where the dog was. Of course, I had to move him far enough away that he could actually do it. So once he would give me any kind of attention at all, I'm going to mark with a yes. I'm going to run the other way and then go into as highest value possible, both with the reward itself and the reward experience.
Now, do you call him off or do you wait till he orients back?
I wait.
Okay.
Because if I start calling, he has a chance to ignore me, number one. Okay, so I only give my dogs commands I know they can follow. Right. So if my dog's running away from me and I know I don't have any hope of getting their attention back, I won't call them.
Okay.
Right. Because I don't want it to be like I told you to do something and you're not doing it. Not because I said it and therefore you must, but because regarding the dog and actually being aware of them, which is a huge issue in dog training, in my opinion, is that we get so stuck on trying to make the dog do things that we're not paying enough attention to notice that they can't. Right. So if my dog's like really engaged in the smell, he can't hear me. It's not that he's ignoring me. He can't hear me. Right.
Yep.
And you can tell like part of those sensors will shut off if they're really engaged in something. Right. Like a dog chasing a deer can't always hear you. And if they're not going to come back, calling them is just pointless. Right.
Yeah.
Like, if I think there's a good chance they'll come back, I'll definitely call. So there I just wait. If they have trouble, initially it'll take a little longer. If they have trouble with that, then I know that my distraction was too high, right? So then I have to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit. So that when they come back of their own idea, right? So they're like, oh, maybe I should look at you. And it could be totally by accident. It could just be that they start sniffing towards you. So if they start sniffing towards you, I'll take it, right? Even if it's accidental. If it's accidental attention, that's still attention. It's fine, which may happen initially, right? So that's kind of
So when they come back to you, you reward them with something better, like chicken or roast beef or something.
Yeah, and I reward in the absolute highest value way possible, right? So for Jolt, his favorite game is Funder. Like, so the throwing the food between your legs, he loves that game. That is like the absolute highest value. So if he were to call off a squirrel, I'm not going to just feed him. I'm going to play Thunder back and forth a few times. Right. Okay. Because what did he want to do? Well, he wanted to chase the squirrel and he wanted to run. Right. Yeah. And then I feed him by like giving it to him. And that's now a boring experience. So even though the food is high value, the reward experience was not. Does that make sense? So how you reward is actually more important for a lot of dogs. Like I can make kibble super exciting if I reward in a way that for that particular dog. Now every dog's a bit different, right?
Well, so, Morgan loves to jump, so
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I would incorporate the chase. So have him chase you, so you're running, and then when he gets to you, have him jump. And then if whether they like to catch, whether they like it thrown, right? Like whatever is going to create more excitement out of your reward.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. So high value reward plus high value experience to get him back with you. Now the transition here is super important. So after you play it once, right, make sure that you're allowing him to disengage. So he comes, he gets a treat. Be very careful that he doesn't think getting the treat means disengage.
Okay.
Right? So what I don't want is when I feed them, they go sniffing.
Right.
A lot of dogs do that and we just don't notice. So you might have to reward them multiple times So if I'm playing
Okay.
catch or something like that, just have him jump up, reward, chase you, jump up, reward, then allow him, right? So I just drop my attention, or I'll tell my dog, go play, right? Just release them so that they're off doing their
Yep.
own thing again. And then you just
Release
play.
with a break. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One thing you do have to watch, if your release cue is a formal one, like my release cue from position is break, but break does not mean go sniff.
Okay.
So for me, I actually will just say like my go play means you don't have to be attentive to me at the moment.
Okay.
Whereas if I use break, I'm expecting you to come like release to me. So you might need a word that's not official.
Okay.
My guys, honestly, I don't even think they know the word. I think they just read my intention. So I
Mhm.
just go like, I just act totally nonchalant and stop connecting with them. And when I stop
Right.
connecting with them, they stop connecting with me, right? Especially since most of my training is done on walks. So they don't need to be on, I actually don't want them to be on me the whole walk,
Right.
right? I want them to act like a dog, if at all possible. Right, just trying to get my cookies into the pen. I literally spilled kibble all over the floor. So I was like, here, have a couple. So, and I find that's super important for them to learn, again, that arousal up, arousal down. So it's like, focus on me, be super intense, and then now you don't need to. Right,
Okay.
so that they're okay to turn off and then turn back on. The other one you want to be mindful of that is that when you're about to start incorporating engagement, always tense up first, right? So you
Mhm.
add anticipation, because that way, if you need your dog's attention, all you have to do is look at them and act like you're about to do something exciting, and they just whip around and they're like, oh, what are we doing?
Right.
Right. Also really helps that when you are in that disconnected, calm state, like the inattentive state, you will never start a game from there.
Mhm.
This is how you teach them to shut off, right?
Right.
So
Right.
in the house, if I'm just doing this is never going to lead to work. I'm not going to do this and then start playing ball, right? There's always going to be that in between that is,
Yep.
engage with you, and now we start playing ball. If the dog brings me the toy, right? So they bring me the toy, I can acknowledge, like, I know you want to play right now, but how about you go lie on your boundary? Perfect, right? And then I'm not going to engage with that. I don't tend to do a lot of ignoring, like flat out ignoring, with my dogs, just because I like that they're connected to me. So like, I appreciate that you want to connect with me, and I personally, like, I put a lot of focus on that. Appreciating the dog's intent for relationship
Mhm.
building. So I'm like, I appreciate that you want to be on my lap right now, but that's not appropriate. So how about we go over there, right? So
Right.
like compromises, or like, how about you lay at my feet,
Yeah.
right? So that
Do
when
this
they
and
are offering me connection, that they want to connect with me, I'm not being like, go away, I don't want to pay attention to you,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
Because when that happens, it's kind of like they're asking for something, and I want to appreciate what they're asking for, but not pay into it. Whereas
Mhm.
when we ignore, it's the opposite of connection, right? So if I'm like, I can't see, like, the ball's on my lap, I'm just not going to even acknowledge it. I just find that that's like my dog's asking to connect with me, and I'm like shutting down that communication, which I
Yeah.
don't like. But I will give
Yeah.
them another behavior. So if they're like throwing a ball on my lap, like, okay, how about you go lie down? Perfect. That's really nice. Good choices
Yeah.
there. Like, so
Yeah.
I just channel it into something versus like, I don't see you, I don't hear you. Just because I don't like that feeling. I appreciate that my dogs want to be near me and want to
Mhm.
connect with me, which it sounds like he does in a lot of situations, right? Like
It is.
he's like, if you were to track how much he's actually trying to connect with you on a daily basis, it sounds like it's pretty high.
It's all the time.
Yeah, yeah, just
Yeah.
not necessarily when you want it, right? Like,
No, exactly.
So that's something I would tend to do with him as well. So
Okay.
questions about the scatter feed and orientation. Again, you don't
No.
actually have to do the scatter feeding part if he's distracted. So if he'll just go sniffing because grass is exciting, you don't have to add food to that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No.
But we
Okay.
definitely want him to go from distracted to chase high arousal, and only do it a couple of times.
Okay.
right? Before you just let
Yep.
him be neutral again. So like 3 to 4 times, perfect. Like that game should probably take less than a minute, right? Like
Okay.
for the engagement part, it might take longer with the sniffing sections in between. And
Okay.
keep the value low, and then you can start to increase. So if you were to make, I tend to make lists with my dogs on what's distracting and how distracting it is, right? So like trees in the environment.
Yeah.
I
Trees
threw a
where
cookie.
somebody's peeing.
Trees in the environment would be a distraction for my male dogs, but not my female dogs, right? Like things like that.
Mhm.
Although some females can get really stuck on that as well. So I think that will definitely be a main one for him, right? And then you can warm up always, like at class, do some of that, like,
Yeah.
but make sure that it's a low level distraction. So it might not be the tree that 50 dogs have peed on that week. It might just be like a section of grass, right? To help get him to choose to disengage from that a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. We can work on that.
All right, so the other one that I would tend to do is called team race, which I have here, which I like because it is working specifically on him choosing to engage with you over other things. Specifically, it could be food or a toy. Ideally, I tend to use a toy for this. So what you're ending up doing, or a treat and train works really well, because if they go to it, there's no value. If you have a training partner, this tends to help because they can block it for you. So if the dog were to try to choose the distraction over you, they can limit the distraction. That's why sometimes I'll like to use a treat and train, because at that stage, I can be 2 people because I have the remote. So there's just no cookie if they run to it. So what you end up doing is you have the distraction. So you start with them on a boundary. You have the distraction behind them. So you either toss the toy behind them, or you can have the treat and train set up behind them. And then what you're going to do is engage the dog with you, and you're going to run the opposite way. So they're choosing to leave whatever it is that you've either thrown or is placed, run with you, and then you can bring them around you and run back to it. Right?
Are you
So they're
calling
coming.
them to come with
Yeah.
you, or are you just running? You're
Always
calling.
call them, use your hand, like, and really make sure they're looking at you when you start to run. That's why I like to use the boundary, because the boundary gives them a moment where they can connect to you. Whereas if you could do it in a sit stay too, it just gives them that moment where they haven't got off, you haven't released them off the boundary yet, right? So it's like really make sure that they're focused on you. If they come with you, you're like, yes, you can either reward for them following you. So if you have the dog where they're running with you and they start to kind of like, you can tell they really want to go back to that thing, you could reward them with something equal or higher value for just coming with you, because you've got motion. So the motion will tend to bump up the value of your reward a little bit. So you have that. And then you can always run around and run back to it. So it's like you're racing as a team. So you're leaving the distraction, running off together. And then when you feel like he's mentally with you, that's when you would turn around and run back to it. Right. So it's a fun game to teach them to run away from something they want.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Which tends to be a great one.
What's
And
that
there's a
one
lot
called?
of running, motion, just keeps the dog with you, and it becomes kind of that game. If they do go the other way, because it will happen. So if they do go the other way, and let's say you had your ball out there and you picked up the ball, I would just very calmly go ask him to out it, right? And then just start the game again. So then it's like, it's not like I don't go leave it or anything. He goes to get it. It's fine. I just don't interact. So it's like, right? Because now I'm saying like the ball's not that valuable. Where if you go to the ball with me, you get running, like it's like bonus deal, right? You get running, and you get excitement when you get to it, and you get verbal praise, right? Like I'm trying to stack as much as possible together so that he would prefer having the reward with you, right, than having it on his own, which will probably also help your retrieving.
Yeah, 2 for 1.
Right? Yeah, like as much it's like a package deal, right? As much value as I can possibly pack into it. That's what I'm looking to do. So it's like, yeah, you could go over there and buy this thing, right? But if you buy it from me, you get this. That's kind of the idea that I want. So that the dog's like, well, I could have my ball by myself, but if I have it with you, I get all these extra things, right? And then that's a huge piece to building in value, because a lot of times we put so much focus on the individual, like the food or the toy. So if I was like, I'm going to train with chicken because my dog absolutely loves chicken, the dog could get chicken by going in my pocket and pulling it out, right? Or they could get the chicken by, stealing it, or they could get the chicken by not listening to what I'm asking and just geeking around me to go get it, right? But if they're actually looking for the experience, they can only get that from me. Right. So then even if I just have kibble, like my food's boring, the dog still gets into that pattern of really wanting to engage with me first.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Perfect.
So that'll be the big thing, because there's always going to be something to smell in the ground, always.
Sure. Yep.
Right. Like that's just for a dog who's got a good nose. That's always there. Like, so I definitely want to make sure that all reinforcement is stronger coming from me. And it's not just about what I have, because then it turns into bribery, right? You're like, oh, look what I have. And at that point, it's like, as soon as you're out of the chicken, you're toast.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like, you want the dog being like, what can we do together? Instead of like, what do you have?
Yeah, right. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so just to recap that, so we'll do focus on boundary games, specifically the out of sight part. We'll do the scatter feed and the orientation dash. Again, it may or may not be scatter feeding. It might just be distraction plus orientation dash. And then the team race. So the team race will really encourage them to leave whatever it is and chase you, and then you can go back and play with it or engage with them after that. Sounds good?
Yeah, perfect. We're going to do that today.
Yeah, let me know definitely how it goes. And throughout the games, or any of the training exercises we're doing, really. So throughout that, if you have anything that's not working, questions, whatever, you can always send me a video clip. You can message me on Boxer, and we can make any adjustments, because although you have the games library, but there's certain things that you may have to change in the moment, like the scatter feeding, you would turn into just him sniffing, for example. So sometimes there'll be subtle changes that you have to make, based on what's happening. So if you run into any stumbling blocks, just let me know, because then we can go through it together and come up with a solution. And then for the skill base for now, we'll work mostly on you.
Yes, right.
With the remembering. So you can definitely set something up with what you have, the equipment that you have. Start with, and your goal is just to be able to run everything without forgetting it, right? Like that's the goal, is to be able to remember your course no matter what you set up. So start within your comfort zone. So 5 to 6 things, even if that was like 5 cone wraps, but make sure if you're doing cones, you know what you're doing. It's not like anything goes. Like, yeah, let's just go around the cone. No, what direction and what handling move are you doing? Right? So that if like that counts, if you planned on doing a K turn and you do a wrap instead, that's counted as forgetting. Right. So start with simple handling, and then you can mix it up, because I can tell you from experience, if you're doing a bunch of wraps and then you throw in a K turn, that's actually pretty hard to remember. Even if you're just working on cones, it's easy to get messed up as far as what handling move goes where. So you can strategically work on that, and again, just focus on the walkthrough part of it, and then we'll work on that in class as well.
Okay, terrific.
Does that make sense? Questions about all of that?
So I've made some notes, but I can always refer to the video, right?
Yeah. So my plan, since today's my first batch of these calls, so we'll see how this works. So my plan is to upload it tonight, because my parents use the internet during the day, so it's super slow. And then I'll upload it to YouTube, and I'll send you the link, so you'll have the video of this to refer back to. And of course, again, you can message me at any time. If I said something and you are like, I know you said something about this, but I can't remember. You can just box me, is probably the easiest way, or you can email me or message me, and we will get it sorted out that way.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah, definitely keep me posted on how it goes. And
you'll see it tomorrow. Maybe there'll be improvement tomorrow, right, Morgan?
There could be.
All right, thank you, Jess.
All right, you're welcome. And yeah, keep me posted.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.